All right, welcome back to Baffled. My name is Jonathan, and today we're going to be talking about reaching youth from broken or non traditional homes. And today we have our guest, Benny Reyes. He's no stranger to the podcast. Last episode, he talked with Jason about building healthy collaboration with parents. And today we're going to be talking about reaching young people who come from broken or non traditional homes. So, Benny, it's great to have you back on the podcast, brother.
Glad to be back, man. Thank you for having me.
Our aim is wanting to equip people who work with young people, youth workers. So whether you're a teacher, youth pastor, administrator, because the reality is as more families are being put together, but as more people don't value marriage, we're going to have a lot more broken homes. And because we're going to have a lot more broken homes, we're going to have lots of children who don't live with their mom or with their dad, or going to have the realities of a stepmom or a stepdad or a foster mom, foster dad. And we want to equip you to be sensitive to those realities. So, Benny, you and I, similar upbringing from New York. So I'm
Yep.
from Jersey,
Jersey,
so
yep.
Northeast upbringing, inner city, hood mentality. So what we're talking about is almost like our lived experience with our friends. I grew up with a single mom. Not sure about you. What was your experience?
I was opposite. I was blessed, 2-parent home. Yeah,
Amen.
yeah, man. It was very rare in that setting.
Yeah, so I grew up with a single mom, and with that comes a lot of challenges where you want to sympathize or have grace to the single mom because she's probably working two jobs. And this is the reality of a lot of the students that we're ministering to. So they're getting over on a lot of stuff. Jason and I, this morning, we're doing a presentation at a Boys and Girls Club, no, at a YMCA, and the kids were rowdy. And you can see how they had 6, maybe 7 employees really enforcing structure. And one of the things I shared with Jason is like, statistically speaking, I'm not trying to throw a blanket statement, but statistically speaking, a lot of the kids here don't have structure at home because there's no father figure in the home or any like that. So they have to provide the structure here. So, question I have is from your experience, what unique needs or challenges do youth from broken or non-traditional families often face?
That's a good question. I feel like I could start off by saying that as a father of 2 boys that weren't biologically mine, I had to.
So this is even your lived reality right now.
It is, yeah, non-traditional marriage home. When I met my wife, our 2 boys were 4 and 9. They're 21 and 26 now. And so, I got to raise them from that time. And it was tough, especially with the older one, to just try to build that relationship, because as a 9-year-old, you're a little bit older. The 4-year-old is younger mentality, easier to shape and mold. But just to understand that I couldn't just jump into being that person that they needed, because sometimes they didn't know that they needed that in their lives, until it was modeled correctly. And so through time, just knowing, even like as a youth pastor, youth worker, a lot of these kids that come from broken homes, they if their father left them, from the home, and left them at an early age, or left them, whenever, it's hard for them to trust another man in their life. So you can't just step in there and be like, hey, I'm so and so, or I'm gonna be the hero of your
I'm
life.
your dad.
Yeah, exactly. Like father figure. That comes through time, or just allowing it to naturally happen, and knowing that God put you there for a purpose and a reason. But yeah, I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we come across with working with non-traditional families, especially broken homes. It's like the trust issues that they have. They're coming from something where their foundation, their structure, everything that they know, the nuclear family, has been broken up. And so it's hard to come out of that as a young kid, so yeah, that's one of the main things I feel like.
Yeah, so I have 2 boys, but they're both under 2, and I can see just how confident my toddler is. Like, he's comfortable in his own skin, he goes anywhere, and it's because of that two-parent home foundation.
Mhm.
He he knows he can jump on me, he can roughhouse with me, but when it comes to if he falls and he gets hurt, he's not coming to me. He goes
Right.
to his mom.
Right.
But he knows he identifies me, daddy, daddy, but I'm the fun parent. But many times what ends up happening, what I see with young people, with teenagers specifically, is with boys, they're not gonna verbalize, "I'm wounded, I'm hurt, I miss my dad," because you know the whole machismo,
Yeah,
like they want to
yeah.
be tough, but deep down they got some father wounds, and those father wounds begin to manifest. Whether they begin to look for surrogate dads, whether it's a gang member, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a teacher, a trusted male role model to kind of fulfill that father wound, but they also end up having a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
begin to, I've had instances where I talked about this in a training where some kids bully other kids, not because they want to be bullies, but because they actually have it good at home. That the only time they get attention from their parents is when they act out.
Mm,
So the only
that makes
reason they're
sense.
acting out is because this is the only time my parents actually pay attention to me,
Right. Wow.
which is a sad, sad
Yeah.
reality. So looking at, so for example, right now in the summers, you're doing a lot, overseeing a lot of the rec centers,
Hmm.
Gladden specifically.
Hmm.
What's an example where you've seen, like, just even that, a teenager just carrying this invisible burden, and because you're aware of it, you've been with them for years, but they don't voice it out. You see them holding it, carrying it from their home life, and they're trying to survive in their summer program or at school.
Yeah, and you mentioned something, very crucial with boys.
Yeah.
Men, typically we are nonverbal in our emotions when we deal with our emotions, and most men will not, speak out loud how they feel. But what we do is we internalize things and we kind of just process it.
Mhm.
It's like it's one of the things that I had to, speak to my wife about when we first got married. Is like you, as an emotional person, you're going to verbalize it, you're going to say how you feel in the moment. Me, I might take a couple of days where it's like, all right, and I see that with the kids when they come in, I will never forget my first year working with kids. I was actually at the YMCA at the time, and a kid comes in and he's crying. You can tell he's been crying for a long time. He's probably maybe like kindergarten age, maybe 5 or 6. And dad pulls me aside and he's like, just to fill you in, his mom and I are splitting up, and he just found out about it. So he's had his head on the table, just sobbing, just weeping. And I felt for the kid, man. It just
Yeah.
almost brings a tear to my eye just thinking about it now. And that kid's probably what, 21, 22 now, but that that's an image that would always be in my head because kids feel it
Yeah.
when the structure that they know as mom and dad is, when that's broken up, they will carry that in different ways. At Gladden Park, we had just in the recent years a young man that lost his dad, and it was through gun violence out there in South St. Pete, and and it was terrible. But when we got the news, I saw a difference in just his demeanor. He was already quiet, but it just kind of, he just shut out, yeah, anger, and shut out everybody. Didn't really speak too much, and I, obviously rightfully so. But it's the ones that don't have anybody to help them navigate
Mhm.
those emotions is the ones that scare me because truly, like, you try to be that person for whoever you can, but we can't be everywhere at all at once as much as we want to try to help everybody. But it's a sad reality because, like you said, they will try to find an escape, an exit from those emotions in different ways,
Yeah.
whether it's on the street corner or gang related, gang leader,
Smoke weed.
smoke. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They'll try to find some way to, express that, those emotions and that anger out. And a lot of times it's always in a, not always, but a lot of times it's in a negative space.
Yeah, it's an unhealthy way. One of the
Hmm.
things I think I was talking with my wife about, and it's with I'm discipling this young man, and he grew up similar environment, unstable, a lot of dysfunction. He's grieving right now because the one male role model that he did have that was like a foster dad
Hmm.
passed away, and he's now taking
Ah.
he's grieving. But one of the things I just shared with my wife is many times when you grow up with dysfunction and you're always on survivor mode, once you get around people who are actually healthy, it's scary.
Mm.
And when I go back to Jersey with my wife, she sees my whole demeanor changes. I begin to more observant.
Right.
I'm on my P's and Q's. But like here, she's like more relaxed. I feel safe because the environment is different.
Hmm.
But when that's your lived reality and you put a kid like that in your youth group, to the youth worker, if you're watching, and to the parent, you need to kind of have a lot of patience, because you have to earn their trust. They don't feel safe with you yet, and because of that, you're going to extend your hand and you're going to help, and they're going to bail. They're not going to follow through, and with that comes, like, they're scared, and you just have to play the long game. It's almost as if be be the father in the story of the prodigal son. Like, you kind of have to, like, all right, he's running off again,
Right.
and you're gonna he's gonna. I know, in his immaturity and his shenanigans, he's gonna do all of this, and when he's done, he's gonna come to his son. He's gonna come, and we're always gonna be here.
Right.
And you're gonna have that posture until the Lord takes a grip of their heart, or they're able to see, like, why is it that you haven't given up on me?
Right.
And it's like, listen, it's because I love you.
Mhm.
Like, I care about you. But many times they're afraid, to your point, to kind of voice that out. Um, so how can the church, or even the school, or a counselor, because you kind of serve in those three different capacities,
Mhm.
play a role in being a consistent presence in the life of a teenager?
That's
It's a loaded question.
yeah, I love it though. It's because there's so much to unpack within that. You mentioned something about how in the previous point that when they haven't seen something that's real and they experience it, it's rare to them.
Mhm.
It's like brought back a thought about, I don't know exactly where this came from, but the creator of the umbrella actually created it for shade from the sun rather than the rain. But people use it. You see people on the inner city using it for shade. And I remember the first time my mom had her umbrella when there was no rain, using it to shade herself from the sun. Somebody was passing by in the street, driving by, and they're like, "Where's the rain?" Like, kind of poking fun. And it was Rick, because that's, we were used to that. But it's just for people that never seen it outside used in its actual original context of what it was supposed to be. It looks strange to them. And so when you show these kids love, it's like they at first they're gonna be like, "Whoa, like what's up with this
Why do
guy?"
you care?
Yeah, like why are you showing up to my games? Like, really, what do you really want? And it's really, through time that they see that you actually care. Now, for the question that you were asking now, was being that presence constantly is truly important to live a life of integrity. And we're not going to be perfect, obviously. We're fallible human, but to live up to a standard biblically of the best that we can be. Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. And as long as I'm following Christ, and follow me. But that's the key, that he was like, follow me as I follow Christ, and to be that model for them. I think it's an important thing to show them that it's not just while I'm at the rec center, but I live this.
Yeah.
I am who you see here. I believe I might be wrong, don't quote me on this, but the Latin word for integrity means to be one. And I think that's powerful, is just to be that same person everywhere you go. Because unfortunately there are people that get into, youth ministry, or just as a youth worker, for the wrong reasons, and they preach one thing to the youth, but then they go out there and they do, different things, which when they see them out in public, and they're like, "Whoa, you're telling me not to smoke and not to drink, and look at," stuff like that. So to model that behavior in front of them, I think is important. Like, I've had working, in youth ministry and as a youth worker for the city of St. Pete, and even, before that in the Y, I get stopped sometimes by young, grown men, beards and everything. They're like, "Hey, Coach Ben," and I look, and it's a grown man with a family. And they're like, "You remember me from," and I'm terrible with names. So I always hit them with the, "Hey, man," like I'll remember a face, but names. And sometimes, like, my wife is like, "Why don't you just ask them?" And I'm like, I just feel bad that they know me. And, but it's one of those things that I had one stop me, and this impacted me to kind of refresh and like regroup my whole mission of why I do what I do. And it was a kid that said, when you were my coach, you were literally the only example of a man that I had that was not only godly, but you modeled a husband and a father. And I would have never seen that if it hadn't been for you. And today I'm a husband and a father, because of what I've seen. And all glory goes to God. But that's just one story of what we can be to those people. Because one of my favorite stories in the Bible, is Peter walking on water with Jesus. And Peter would have never asked to walk on water if Jesus didn't model it first. I don't think that would have been on his bucket list that day to just be like, what are we gonna do today? Grocery shop, run some errands. Oh yeah, walk on water later. Like that wasn't a part of the plan. But because he saw Jesus do it first, it was like, whoa. It's like, permit me to do it. And I think a lot of times we can be that for other people where we're walking on something that they see as impossible because this is a culture of, you're not a real man unless you got a body count, multiple women, you're cheating on whoever, like you're not faithful. So when they see an actual faithful, man to one woman, that's a father and everything, it kind of like puts it in perspective. Like maybe I can walk on water too. Maybe I can become that. And I don't have to be what I saw uncle, so-and-so do, or.
Yeah, and one thing, even to the fathers with daughters, or even thinking about, there's a young girl who comes to mind right now. So before I was working here at New Life Solutions, I was a teacher, and I would see what you're saying, even in terms of how some of the young girls gravitated towards me as a surrogate father figure,
Right.
because they're seeing someone, Mr. Reyes, you you and I both have
Yeah,
had
yeah,
that.
yeah, I just,
Mr. Reyes, you love your kids. You really love your wife. And it's like strange.
Mm.
And then it came to the point where it's like, hey, can we babysit your kids? I was like, nah, for integrity purposes, like I can't have you
yeah,
watch my kids.
right.
But at the same time, it's like they're seeing care. Like the counsel I'll give them is like, why are you dating this knucklehead? He doesn't like you. I thought I kind of have to do this to show. I was like, he don't like you. He's only saying those nice things because he wants what he wants. So you're much more valuable than that.
Right.
And Jason used an illustration this morning as he was talking about relationships
Mm.
in a presentation, and it reminded me of a sermon that Matt Chandler was sharing a couple years ago, and how the preacher was talking in terms of purity culture about, he brought a rose, and he just had everybody pass around the rose, and as everybody was touching it, smelling it, by the time it came back to the preacher, the rose was kind of no longer pleasant to look at.
Mm.
And the idea was, ladies, guard your virginity, because look at what happened in this rose. Who's gonna
Mm.
want this rose? And although it hits the point, Matt Chandler sat there and stood up and said, but you know who wants the rose? Jesus wants the rose.
Mm.
Jesus died
That's
for the rose.
powerful.
And he was like, I get what you're saying, but let's not unintentionally shame these young girls who've made mistakes and are trying to change their life for the
Mm-hmm.
better.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, a lot of those mistakes, the body count that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a generation of young girls who think that having a high body count is not going to affect their future. Science says otherwise, the Bible says otherwise, and a lot of that could be avoided if they had a two-parent household and that the father was actually present and engaged.
Right.
And I am like thrilled that as more millennials and Gen Z men are becoming dads, I'm saying more dads are actually taking the assignment seriously. And I think it's because we're reacting to not have, we know what it feels like to not have our dad in the house.
Right.
So now we're like, no, we have to kind of be there. I have to be there for my daughters. Kobe made it cool to be a girl dad. So you have all these realities, but at the same time, what I'm seeing is that what they honestly need is a consistent presence. They need emotional stability. They need love and care. They need a role model that comes from both men and women. Like sometimes in church spaces, and I'm sorry for going on a tangent,
Mm-hmm.
but we tend to want to gender everything in terms of like girls go with the older ladies and the young men go with the older men, and there's biblical precedent for that. But at the same time, young girls need male. They need to see what a healthy husband
Right.
looks like. They
Right.
need to
Right.
see what a healthy dad looks. What does a strong man, godly man who loves Jesus look? If they don't have it at home, who's going to do that? So if you're a parent here and you're watching this, I want to encourage you, serve in your youth group and adopt a young child who doesn't have these systems. Invite them into your life. Let them see what health kind of
Mm-hmm.
looks like, so that you can kind of be a surrogate mom and dad, or an extension to the single mom, like help the single mom
Right.
be there so that they can see what healthy looks like.
Even Danielson had Mr. Miyagi. Like you can be inserted. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the leadership standpoint, but just being there, being
Yeah.
present. Just to talk about like my upbringing, like I mentioned in the beginning, I had both parents at home,
Yeah.
but my friends around me didn't. And I didn't know what I had until it was seen on the outside. Like I didn't really realize it till later where I thought everybody had the same thing I had. And then I started realizing it later on. And one of my friends kind of helped me to put that in its place because I got really disrespectful with my father. And my dad became like the neighborhood. He was, everybody called him Papi,
Mhm.
because he was like, they heard me say, but that he became that for them. And speaking to them today, they would let me know like, man, your dad was the only
Mhm.
father figure. I always wanted to become that. But that time where I got really disrespectful with him, and my friend pulled me to the side, and he was like, "Look, like respectfully, if I ever hear you speak to him like that again," like he was a lot bigger than me, and so I was like, "All right, I got you," but it didn't hit me until he said it in those terms of like,
Yeah.
you don't know how good you have it.
Yeah.
Like you really are blessed, man. Look around you. Like I wish I had my father in my life the way that
Mhm.
you do. It's like he shows up. He's there. He works. You can watch him. Come home from work. He's a man of God, and it's like it hit me that
Mhm.
really struck something in me to really realize like, man, that's a true blessing. So being that model, like you said, like it's for the young men, we can be a picture and a future hope of what they can become.
Yeah.
And for the ladies, it can be a model, role modeling a gentleman,
Yeah.
somebody that they could actually had set the standard for marriage
Yeah.
instead of looking at in the direction of the knuckleheads, lack of better terms.
So, what what are some signs that a teen might be struggling silently because of issues at home? You brought up the story of the 5-year-old who was crying all day, and I can't imagine, you know, that the news. Like when my parents got divorced when I was like 3, maybe 4, but I wasn't around for that. So what my parents did was I got shipped my sister and I got shipped to go live with my aunt in DR for
Mm.
almost a year while my parents were sorting out the divorce. I didn't realize it when I came back. I was living with my mom and I was like, "Where's Poppy? Where's dad? Like he's not here." And it was a new normal, but because I had was removed, it didn't hit me as hard. It hit me hard when I was like 19 years old.
Wow.
Like because my dad wasn't there in my most formative years. So when when I served in youth ministry, the kids who didn't have their dads in the home, it's a special thing to me because
Hmm.
like I need to kind of go above and beyond because like this one kid, oh, he has both parents at home. He has the support system I didn't have. This one doesn't. So I'm gonna need to kind of go a little bit further with communication
Hmm.
with mom. I can't just say, hey mom, can you make sure? No, I have to double down and send extra. Hey, just an FY, we're having youth group tonight. Just as an FY, there's this game thing going tonight.
Right.
Like, because your son needs it or your daughter needs it. So for the teenager that's struggling silently because of those issues, how can a youth worker respond with like just sensitivity?
Yeah, just I think one of the big things that we could do is just you don't have to make them do anything because if you build that rapport with them and they build that trust with you, it comes naturally. Like they will talk to who they feel comfortable with. So sometimes like if I feel like maybe I don't have that relationship yet with that
Mhm.
that student or camper wherever we're at, I kind of look at it as like, all right, just to let them know I'm here. Like
Mhm.
if you do, I will listen. If you need advice, I will try my best to navigate, help you navigate through this issue. And if I can relate to it, maybe I can
Mhm.
share a testimony or something that could be helpful to you. But I think it's just trying our best not to force these things. They'll come naturally when they truly know that you care. Like when
Yeah.
they understand that you're there for them. It builds that. Like when I met my wife, like I mentioned, met the two boys. I wasn't trying to from the get go like say like, hey, I'm your dad now. That
Mhm.
took time. They didn't call me dad right away. They called me by my first name. And it wasn't maybe till like 2, 3 years later, right before our wedding,
Mhm.
that they felt the oldest one was the first one to be like, "Hey, dad." Like I could
How did it
tell
make
you.
you
It
feel?
was like
Yeah.
I turned around. I'm like, did I hear that right? Like it was like it was a blessing, to hear that because it felt like, man, there was a breakthrough and like a barrier was broken, and it was just, truly. And then so the little one shortly after followed. He had a better relationship with his father than the older one did.
Yeah,
And so,
was a baby.
yeah, he was a baby, and he had a his relationship with his father was, his father has in and out. He'll call him for birthdays and kind of pick him up. Lived locally, a few cities away. The oldest one, that wasn't the case with his father. Like, so it was tough to try to, just be that person for them. But through time, when they felt comfortable enough, they're like, all right, this isn't just another guy in our lives that's gonna, turn his back. This is somebody that actually cares. So they kind of built that bridge between us. So yeah, just to show them that you care, being sensitive enough to just know that, a lot of times you don't have to force them to talk to you about anything.
Yeah,
Because if they trust you, they will eventually be like, hey, you know what, like, can I talk to you, or pull you to the side, but just allowing them to know that you're there, you're a presence that truly cares about what they're going through and what they're dealing with.
yeah. So, last question: how do you foster belonging in a youth group or classroom, or even in like the summer camp season, when family looks different for every student?
Yeah, that's so, thinking about it this way, the way that the apostle Paul put it, where the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. Every part of the body functions differently. And so what I try my best to communicate with them, whether just, through time verbally or just through actions, is that you're needed. Like, we're here together. We're, part of this camp or youth group, and your story is not his story or her story. Your background differs from the person that sits next to you, but that's what makes us who we are. That's what makes us unique. And to help them understand that, that's how the body functions. Like, the eye does not look like my hand, versus, my kneecaps don't look like my feet, but they can't say that they can't function without each other, because we need each other to be able to build that healthy family that we're trying to cultivate. So, yeah, I would definitely say, like, just to understand, first of all, that you're not dealing with the same backgrounds is very needed. You have to understand that everybody comes from. When I was a youth pastor in the beginning of my ministry, we had kids from the neighborhood just coming in, and we had ones that came from, two-parent homes. We had ones that came from broken homes. We had, ones that their mom was raising them, their dad was raising them, the dad wasn't in the picture. Different, upbringings. We had ones that were pretty much raising themselves because the parents were just pretty much non-existence, which is a sad reality. And but when we came together, we had that one goal in mind, which was to try to see how we can work together for the goal of giving them, purpose for evangelism, or, like, the mission of what we're trying to do as a youth group.
Yeah, so that was a lot, Benny. Like, a lot of great conversation, a lot of great content on just how to reach those who come from a non-traditional or broken home. So as we wrap up, so if you're out there and you're a parent, one thing that I would highly encourage you, I know I probably said this earlier, consider serving in your youth group and look to adopt a teenager in that group, specifically a teenager who lives with a single parent. Look to foster ways of how you can help single parents, whether it's a single dad or a single mom. We're the church, we're a body, that's what we're
Hmm.
here for. So if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe for more content like this. If you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, make sure you follow us for more episodes, because this is Baffled, where we want to help you understand your misunderstood teen.